All right. So on to the new stuff. Chapter 13, dealing with annuities. Annuities. First off, examples of annuities. Classic example of an annuity is a 401k. All right. Or another classic, of course, is your IRAs. It's another one. Technically, another example. Social Security is also actually an annuity, right? The whole point of collecting Social Security, everybody sort of says that Social Security is an entitlement, that people should have their Social Security taken away from them. Realize that all people are doing when they collect their Social Security is getting the money back that they put into the system to begin with. So, if Social Security runs out of money, that basically means that the government stole from all those people who were putting money into the Social Security fund to begin with. Okay? So, Social Security, I mean, if you're old enough and you've been around long enough, you're probably getting Social Security reports that tell you this is how much money you're going to get paid if you keep working at the same rate, etc., etc., etc. All that stuff is basically telling you how much money have you put in there, plus how much interest have you been earning on that money you put in there. Social Security actually pays you interest on the money you invest. And when you collect Social Security, they give it back, plus the interest, because they should, okay? So, if Social Security runs out of money, that's a non-thinkable thing, right? Now, the fact that Social Security is low on cash and high on investments like bonds and stocks and stuff like that, that is true, right? I mean, what Social Security does with all that extra money sitting in the bank account is that it invests it so that it can earn interest, right? I mean, if the government took your money and put it into a mattress and say at Fort Knox or something like that, you wouldn't be earning any interest on your money. So Social Security's job, right? There's probably about 4,000 or 5,000 people hired by the Social Security Fund to invest all of that money. And it's trillions of dollars, folks, right? I mean, there's lots of money floating around there. There's like 4,000 or 5,000 people. Their job is to invest that money and get as much interest as they can on the money that you essentially gave them. Okay, that's Social Security, and it's an annuity, right? It's generating interest just like everything else. Now, standard annuities. So the key to annuities is that they are the same as compound interest, with one little caveat involved. Instead of just earning interest every period, what else do you do on top of your interest every period? You add more of your own money to it, right? With additional principal added each period. So think about the way you pay off your car loans, right? I mean, you pay a certain amount every month, and every month a certain amount of it pays off interest and a certain amount of it pays off principal. Well, now if you think about buying your car before you actually buy it, right? In other words, pay for it every month, but don't actually buy it, just put it into an account that's earning interest. That's what an annuity is. So if your car payment is $150, if you put $150 into an account every month and earn compound interest monthly, you'd essentially be buying your car early, except that instead of paying interest, you earn it. Right? Again, the caveat, of course, is having exactly $150 to give away every month. Sometimes that's questionable. But the idea is it's exactly the same as compound interest. It's just that there's extra money going in each period. All right? So you invest a set amount each period and earn interest each period as well. That's what an annuity is, right? So your 401k, basically every paycheck you put a certain amount of money in, it earns interest, and you keep putting that same amount in every month, right? And you keep putting the same amount in so that you don't notice that you're paying that money, right? The whole point of investing is you do it before you get the money, because then you don't feel like you're investing, you're just living off of what you actually have instead of what you really have, all right? And of course you do it because remember that all the money that you invest into a 401k or an IRA is tax-free money, right? Tax-free. And tax off the top percentage rate that you may pay in income tax, right? So it's always bonus money when you put money into an investment, as long as it's in one of these two things, because those two things are tax deductible, free money. It's like free money with free money earned on the interest from that free money. So use them if you have. All right, so sorry. Now, technically there will be two types of annuities, and it's just purely based on the timing of the annuity, okay? In an ordinary annuity, when you invest your money, you invest at the end of the period, right? So think of an ordinary annuity as the kind of annuity where you work a certain amount of time, say a year, and then you decide, how much money do I have? However much money I have, I'm going to invest this much of it, okay? So you have to work for a year in order to figure out that you actually have some money to invest, and you say, oh great, I have some, blank, I'm going to put that away. You work for another year, do the same thing, all right? And assume that your account is earning compound annual interest. That's the way annuities work, right? So invest at the end of each period. Now, think about the very first period of your annuity, right? If you're investing it at the end of the period, how much interest do you earn in the first period if you invest at the end of that period? Nothing. Because you put it at the end, right? So there was zero money in there for however long that period was. All right, so the big note to this one is zero interest in first period. Okay, so that's what an ordinary annuity is. Now, guess what the other annuity type is going to be? If one of them you invest at the end of the period, guess what the other one's going to be? The beginning of a period, yeah, so your guys' intuition is correct. Those are called annuity due. In an annuity due, in theory, you already have a certain amount of money already, and you're just going to decide, I'm always going to invest this at the very beginning of the period. You earn interest in the first period, and then you keep investing always at the beginning of that period every time you invest. All right? Invest at the beginning of each period. And so what's my note this time? Note, interest is earned in first period. So there really is no difference between the two in reality sense, except that one of them is going to have more money. All right? And I'm going to show you a trick on how to differentiate between the two of these when you go to use the columns to figure out how to get these values. Okay? Now, back in chapter 12 on the first day, what did we do? Think back, very first day in chapter 12. What did we do to start off learning about compound interest?
The long way.
We did the long way. We had to stretch, get our fingers ready to go. Guess what we need to do here at the beginning of chapter 13? We gotta go the long way. Because the reason is, what do the tables do again? They approximate. I may, if I'm feeling like an asshole, ask you to do something exactly. That means you gotta do it this way. Okay? So, the exact way. Now I'm gonna make these a little bit more straightforward, not quite as nasty as last time, but still, we gotta do at least a few examples so that we can sort of see what's going on. Alright? So, so let's invest, let's keep the numbers easy though. Let's say $1,000 at the end of each quarter into an account. There's two C's there, put it in there. Account that pays, should we get good interest or bad?
Make it more realistic.
More realistic? Okay, so let's go with 4% compounded quarterly. So this investment is just a regular sort of standard annuity investment where you're investing in fixed income type products instead of the stock market. If you're investing in the stock market, this number is more like 8, 9, 10%. So what I want to know is how much money will I have at the end of 1 year? So how much is in the account at the end of 1 year? So all we're doing is 1 year. Being much nicer. So, if you think back to chapter 12, remember that the first thing we did was we said, well, we need to figure out how many periods we're going to be doing this stuff. The same applies here. How many periods is this example going to have? 4, right? Because we're compounding quarterly. That means there's going to be 4 periods in 1 year. So we're going to do things the same way. We're going to have period 1. We're going to have period 2. We're going to have period 3. And we're going to have period 4. All right, so the first quarter, right? Remember that this is all just compound interest, folks. Remember that compound interest is just simple interest applied each period, okay? So in my first period, how much interest do I earn?
None.
Why?
The end of each period.
Exactly, because how much money was in this account at the beginning of that period?
0. Okay.
Right? Because we didn't invest anything yet, so there's nothing in the account. Now, technically, the rate is 4%, and you guys would say, wait a second, Marsh. Well, we're doing it simple interest. So the rate is 4%, the time is 3 months, which you guys would tell me is 3/12 or 1/4 of a year. And if I calculate my interest, I'm going to go through it in its detail here. Interest, what's 0 times 4% times 1/4? Deep, right?
Yeah.
Now, normally you would say, take this interest, which is my compound interest, and slap it on to the amount of money that I had in period 1, which was nothing. Now, in an annuity, remember that we're always investing at the end of that period. So, what do I do at the end of that period? Yep, invest $1,000. Okay, so how much money do I have at the start of period 2? $1,000, right. Good. Now it actually starts to make a difference, right? So our rate is 4%. Our time is, again, I'm going to jump right to 1/4 of a year. Hope you guys don't mind. This is the second quarter. So how much interest do I earn in the second period? 1,000 times 4% times 1/4. $10. And what else do I always do at the end of every period? Exactly, right? I take another $1,000 out of my paycheck and I invest another $1,000. So instead of just adding 10, now we add the interest 10 and an additional investment back to our original. Don't forget we're adding this on to the original, right? None of the money disappears, it's always still there. Again, even if it's Social Security, the money is still there, regardless of whether the government is dicking around with it or not. Okay? So both of these go back up to our RP, and RP for our next period. $2,010. Because we add to the original principal our additional investment and our additional $10 of interest. Rate and time are the same. It's still 4% for 1/4 of a year. So how much interest do we earn in the third period?
$20.10.
Basically 10% of that number. So our $2,000 earned us the $20. Our $10 of interest earned us an additional 10 cents of interest. Again, interest on our interest and interest on all of our investments that keep adding up and adding up. And at the end of that third period, what do? Don't forget that you always invest an additional $1,000 at the end of every period, no matter what. So to start our fourth period, your 2010 gets another $20.10 in interest, but another $1,000 investment out of your paycheck. We start our third period with $4,030.10. Our rate and time, still 4% for 1/4 of a year.
Is that 3,000 or 4,000?
That should be
3.
3,000.
Oh, did I wrote?
I'm gonna leave you alone today.
Don't you want an extra $1,000 for free?
I'll leave you alone.
So how much interest do I earn in my last period? Times 4% times 1/4. $30.30. And what do I still do at the end of the fourth period? Don't forget to still invest $1,000. And so my future value, or my ending value of my annuity, again, I call it future value. The book tends to call it the amount of the annuity. I like the concept of future value, because this is what it is, right? It's the future value of investing $1,000 at the end of every period. How much do we have at the end?
Now you have 4,000.
40, 60, 40.
Yeah.
Again, nice little symmetric number. I like those symmetric numbers. They're cute. So, here is our ordinary annuity. Now, this is column 3.
Huh?
This is the third column. So if I asked you to calculate this value using an approximate table instead of calculating it exactly, you would use the table just like you used the tables before, except now you get to use column 3 instead of columns 1 or 2. So column 3 is an annuity where you're investing a certain amount every period and getting compound interest on all of that money while you're investing. So, oh yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. So, let's switch to using the table. So when you use the table, it's the same way, folks, right? just like we did back in chapter 12, we said, oh, here's the long way, where you have to do it every period, or you can use the tables and you just multiply by once. Same thing. Alright? The difference here is that when you're using the table, P is the amount you invest each period. Okay? When you're using column 3 and it's an annuity, the P is what you put in every period. So in this case, how much do I invest every period? $1,000. Good. The page and the row, folks, same thing. We do it exactly the same way as we did back in chapter 12. So, what page am I going to go to? What was my percentage? 4%. And how many times are we compounding or investing the money? 4. So divide that by 4. You are going to go to the 1% page. What row are we going to go to? We're doing this for 1 year. There are 4 periods in this year. So we are going to go to the 4th row because there are 4 periods of compound interest that we're earning. So if we go to the 1% page and use column 3, because that's how you do annuities, row 4, $4.0604, multiply that by 1,000. What do we get? We get exactly the same amount that we got using the exact method. Again, this happens, rarely do you get the exact answer from the tables, but every now and then you do. Same sort of thing applies in column 3 as it did in columns 1 and 2. This is an approximation. Sometimes it's closer, sometimes it's not. Alright, now, you know you always have to do the painful way twice, because it builds character, and we always need more character. Oh, we always need more character. Always, period. No matter how much you got, you can always put more in there. Alright? So, we got to do it the long way one more time. The twist to doing it this time is that we're going to do the exact same problem, but I'm going to change this word. Guess what I'm going to change it to?
The beginning.
So let's do the same problem, but invest at the beginning. So let's do it the exact way first, and then once we see the exact way, because once we start seeing the exact way, you're going to start noticing something really quick. Using that, we're going to figure out how to use the tables to get this answer as well. All right, but please note that the tables, column 3, is meant for ordinary annuities only. Investing at the end, not the beginning. Okay? So one of the big notes that you should have in here for column 3 is that this is ordinary annuities, investing at the end. Alright, there will be a trick to dealing with investing at the beginning and working with annuities due. Alright, so we're still doing the same problem. So how many periods are there going to be? Okay, good. Periods don't change. So we have period 1, we have period 2, we have period 3, and we have period 4. Now, in this problem, we invested always here at the end. In our new annuity due problem, when are we going to invest?
The beginning.
At the beginning. So instead of putting invest $1,000 at the end, I'm going to put it at the very beginning all the time. So The change in the problem is that this phrase, instead of being at the end, is now at the beginning. Okay? So we threw $1,000 into the account. How much do we have at the beginning of our first period? $1,000. Good. What rate are we earning?
4%.
It's still 4%. How long is it going to generate interest? A quarter of a year, because it compounds quarterly still. So how much interest do I earn in my first period this time? My interest, which is 1,000 times 4% times 1/4, we earn $10 in interest. And that $10 in interest gets added to the beginning of our second period. But remember, what do we do at the beginning of the second period? Yeah, don't forget that at the beginning of each period, we're still throwing our $1,000 in, right? So what does our second period start with? 1,000 plus the 10 plus another 1,000. Do you see it yet?
I saw it when we first started.
Okay, so how much interest am I going to earn in the second period here?
2010.
2010.
She said another period to finish the problem. That's what period did.
So interest is 2010 times 4% times 1/4. We earn $20.10 in the second period. Over here we were earning it in the third period. How much money do I have at the start of my third period? Again, don't forget we're investing $1,000. Rate time. And interest. Now you guys don't have to calculate it because you know. You've already done it once. You don't need to do it a second time. This number and this number are the same. We already calculated the interest. It's right there. Grab it. So again, don't forget, at the beginning of the fourth period, we still invest $1,000. What do we start the fourth period with? It's always what we ended the ordinary annuity with. So the 30-30 plus the 30-30-10 plus the 1,000. And here's the only one that we have to actually calculate, right? So the interest here is 40, 60, 40 times 4% times 1/4. We earned $40.60 in that last period. And this is the only difference between ordinary annuity and annuity due, is the fact that we get this extra interest at the last period. Right? This is the only amount of money that we get on top. So our future value here is this 40, 60, 40 plus the 40, 60. Sounds like I'm making a bad joke. $41,01,00 future value. So the key here is realizing that there's got to be a relationship between these two, right? Because the numbers they're repeating. So there's got to be a way for us to get the same numbers, but be able to get the annuity due answer using the tables. All right? So to lead you to this problem, what I'd like you to do is to take a look at your tables, and in column 3, tell me what the very first number is, no matter what the percent is on all of your tables. Why is it always 1? Well, but at 15%, why would it be 1%? It doesn't make sense. Why is it always 1?
That's how they made the table.
I mean, essentially you're right, but because in this first period, remember that the table does ordinary annuities. How much have you invested in the first period? How much interest do you always earn in the first period of an ordinary annuity? Nothing. So how much money are you going to have at the end of the first period always? Whatever you started with, because you're just investing in it. So it makes sense that 1 is always the first number, right? Because it's an ordinary annuity. You didn't earn any interest, so you don't get any interest, so tough shit, quit your bitching. All right, now, the key here is realizing that in order to get what we want in this answer here, note that to get the correct amount of interest that we earn, we need to go 1 extra period, right? If we would have done this to the 5th period, we would have figured out that the interest was $40.60. So the technique to convert ordinary into annuity is go that extra period, right? So, to use the table for annuity due, before you go in the table, you have to do one trick. You have to add 1 additional period. So in other words, add 1 to your row at the very end, so that you get that extra period's interest that you missed out on. Now, the problem with it is that if you add 1 row, how many times do you invest? You would invest an extra time, right? Remember here, we're investing, yeah, we would invest 5 times, but how many times did we really invest over here? 4. So all we have to do at the very end to correct for that, when we add a row, subtract 1 investment. Add 1 additional period, and then after using the table, if I can spell the word using, so after using the table, subtract 1 investment. Subtract 1 investment.
Yeah.
Whoa! What the?
Yeah.
Okay, Marshall, get off the crack and tell us what the hell you're talking about. Alright, so. To use the tables for annuity due. Alright? So first off, you do everything the same way as you would an ordinary annuity. Your P is still however much you're investing every period, right? Again, do everything exactly the same way, just those little twists that you have to add to it, right? What page am I going to go to? Well, go to your percent. It's still 4%. You're compounding it quarterly, so divide it by 4. We're going to be on the 1% page. But then when we go to the row, again, still do everything the same way. You're going to do 1 year. And since there are 4 periods in a year, you're going to multiply by 4. And then this is where you add 1, right? Because of an annuity due, you have to add 1 extra row at the very end. All right? So, add 1 additional period. We've added our additional period. And then after using the table. So now, use the table. So, on the 1% page, this time use row 5. So on 1%, third column, row 5, what's our number? 5.1010. Multiply that by your P. In other words, use the table. That's what using the table means. So we'll have $5,101 in there. And then what's the very last thing we have to do to correct it?
Subtract 1,000.
Subtract one investment or subtract 1,000. Here's our investment amount. Minus 1,000. There's the other piece to the annuity due. What are we left with? The $4,101 that we calculated doing it the long way. All right. Whew. That's a lot to throw at you there at the very end. Realize that we will start here on Wednesday and review the difference between ordinary annuities and annuities due. This is still column 3. Yes, this is all still column 3. Don't forget that then on Wednesday we also have to cover columns 4 and columns 5 because that will round out the tables.